Okay, so I'm going to present the overview of the ASCCR framework. And the ASCCR is 5 essential components of collaboration. It's the attitude, the structure of meetings, it's the content of the collaboration, with a special emphasis on understanding the qualitative aspects of a project and the context of the data before you do quantitative analyses, and then translating the quantitative analyses back into qualitative answers to research questions. And then, of course, communication is key for collaboration, and then focusing on the relationships between the statistical collaborators and the domain experts is the 5th essential component of collaboration. So this is just a background slide. I would mention, I guess, that last year I was a US Fulbright scholar in Indonesia. And so one of my collaborators, Lily, is on this, is on the webinar. But we ended up translating the ASCCR framework into Indonesian language and culture and taught it to 88 students earlier this year. Okay, so just last week, this would have been a representative photo of the University of Colorado Boulder. And then it snowed yesterday. And so today, the campus looks something like this. So it's a winter wonderland at the moment. So the idea really is that we start off with a statistician or a data scientist, and then with education, training, mentoring, and support, that person can become what I would say a collaborative statistician or data scientist. So the training and collaboration can then turn somebody who has good technical skills into somebody who can work with domain experts to enable and accelerate research, to help governments make better decisions, support non-governmental organizations, and help business and industry make data-driven decisions. So that's what I consider to be the collaborative statistician who is working with these domain experts to really bring statistics out into the world for the benefit of society. Now, the next step after one becomes an individual collaborative statistician is to create a stat lab. So all of you are involved with stat labs. So stat labs educate and train the next generation of statisticians. They serve as research infrastructure for the university. So researchers who need help with statistics can come to the stat lab. And by teaching short courses and workshops, these stat labs improve statistical skills and data literacy. And this combination of the collaborative statistician with a domain expert, somebody we might call a data-capable development actor, that combination can be really powerful and can really drive change and development, sustainable development. So again, stat labs in our global network really individually have 3 missions. And the first is to train statisticians and data scientists to become effective interdisciplinary collaborators. So these are typically the students or other staff members who are becoming better collaborators by working on projects with domain experts. And that's the second part, is that these stat labs create that space for collaboration to be able to transform evidence into action. And so domain experts, they have some problem, they probably have data, or maybe they want advice on how to design a study to collect good data, but they come to the statisticians in the stat lab asking for statistical expertise to help them move their research forward. And then stat labs also teach short courses and workshops to improve statistical and data science skills and literacy widely throughout the community. And as we know from many of the stat labs, I'm thinking of UI Lisa. They do other things to improve statistical and data science skills and literacy widely, such as walk-in, drop-in hours, such as their podcast or a radio show, etc. So just quickly, we're talking about the growth of the LISA 2020 Global Network. So in 2017, we had a symposium in Morocco at the World Statistics Congress, and we had 10 individuals from, I think, 7 countries. And then in 2019, we had 30 participants from 10 developing countries in Malaysia. So that was in Kuala Lumpur. And then 2 years ago in Kumasi, in Ghana, we had 90 attendees, 90 participants at our LISA 2020 Sustainability Symposium. Now we, don't have the next symposium planned yet. And so that's maybe something for us to think about, is how we can continue to build on our growth and continue our growth. And as the overview, we currently have 36 labs in the network. The newest lab was from Zimbabwe. And hopefully we'll have Pusaka from Indonesia join the network. And so there's a process that we need to, I think, discuss with our Indonesian colleagues to get Pusaka to be part of the LISA 2020 Global Network. And along with this map are some of the metrics. So from 36 labs, we had over 3,600 students who were trained in these labs. They worked on almost 2,000 projects, 654 workshops to almost 20,000 attendees, and many, many, many peer-reviewed publications came out of the research that was generated by the stat labs. And of course, we have 2 books. LISA 2020 book is the link to our first one about just developing the practice of statistics and collaboration in developing countries. And then we have a sustainable statistics and methods second book. And then the third book should be coming out pretty shortly. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the framework. So I had been a collaborator, a statistical collaborator, the director of LISA for about 10 years, and had worked on maybe 500 projects individually, and had supervised 250 students, or actually more like 280 students who had worked on more than 3,000 projects. And from all of that, also I had been teaching collaboration for about 10 years. And from all of this experience, with my colleague, Heather Smith, we talked a lot about how can we sort of simplify this really high multidimensional space of collaboration. So in reality, right, there's hundreds or thousands of variables that go into effective collaboration. When we're talking about people and people interacting, there's so much going on that I always find it useful to try to do a dimension reduction on that high dimensional space. And what we came up with were these really 5 principal components of collaboration: attitude, structure, content, communication, and relationship. And so, if you pronounce this, the way that we pronounce it is ASCCR. So it's kind of like ask her a question, or ask her what she's doing right now. Ask her what she wants to accomplish in our meeting today. Ask her is how we pronounce this framework. So what I've found, and what the people that I've shared the framework with, who have actually used it for teaching their students to become effective collaborators, is that having this framework in mind really helps us focus on learning essential collaboration skills. So we're not just gaining experience and then learning slowly from experience, but we are intentionally trying to improve our attitude of collaboration. Oh, cool. We're intentionally trying to improve our attitude of collaboration. We're improving how we structure meetings. We are.
For a moment.
Okay, pause for a moment.
Lock your door, please. It's
Okay. We're trying to explicitly deliver the content that our collaborators want, and really trying to push the envelope to transform the evidence of our statistical analysis into action for sustainable development. We're trying to become better communicators, and we're trying to, intentionally strengthen our relationships with domain experts. And so it's really 5 things to focus on, rather than trying to focus on 100 or 1,000 different things. So this paper was written and published in 2019 in the Journal of Statistics Education, which is now the Journal of Statistics and Data Science Education. And every year there's an award for the best paper in this journal. And this paper won the award in 2020 as the best paper of the year in the journal. And so down here, bit.ly/ASCCR all lowercase, is a link to the paper. The paper is open access, so anybody can read it. And then I'll mention, but I don't have links, that there are now about 4 sequel papers. So 4 papers that have come after the ASCCR framework. And I'm going to resubmit another one today. Actually, I have a deadline of today for resubmitting a paper about the QQQ workflow. And so that will be hopefully published in the next few months as well. Okay, so what I would like to do today is to introduce or reintroduce the framework to this audience, but also get you to think about which aspects of this framework are universal, so that they're applicable for all statisticians and data scientists, and which aspects might be country or context dependent, so dependent on local culture. So this is what we did in Indonesia. We thought about how what might be different about collaboration in Indonesia, what might be missing from the framework, or what of the framework might need to change to adapt to Indonesian culture. So, we have a very diverse international audience today, and we have 11 or 12 countries represented in the LISA 2020 Global Network, and so we have a lot of different cultures, and so I am asking you, when you hear about this framework today, what do you think resonates with the culture, with your culture, and what doesn't? What should be changed to adapt it to your local culture? Okay, so I'll start off with attitude. I think that a collaborative attitude really sets the foundation for effective collaboration. I find that if my students are if they are committed to being helpful to the domain expert, then they can always say, if I don't know the answer right now, but I can go back, talk with my professors, talk with my other colleagues, look up in my books or on Google or ChatGPT to find out the answer, and I will, I'll come back with the answer tomorrow or next week. So having this attitude of being helpful is really, really a facilitator of collaboration. So there are some attitudes that are helpful like that, and some attitudes that detract from collaboration. One attitude is that domain experts are really stupid and they don't know anything about statistics, and that's why they're coming to me. I'm the expert. If they don't listen to me, it's their problem, and they should listen to every single thing I say because I am the expert. That kind of attitude is not helpful for collaboration. Respecting what the domain expert brings to the table, understanding that they are an expert in their field. At the very least, if they've collected data, they are an expert in their data. They are the world's foremost expert in that data because they are the ones who collected that data. So there are, many attitudes that I think are helpful for collaboration and attitudes that are not helpful. And then again, there's this idea of a high dimensional space. Like, really, how many attitudes are there about collaboration, positive and negative? Thousands, millions. And so one way to think about it is just into three categories of me, you, and we. So there are attitudes that I have about myself. A very strong one, helpful one, is that collaboration is important and I can learn skills to become a better collaborator. I think that's a very powerful attitude that somebody can have about themselves. Then there's attitudes about the domain expert. I say that's you. So the domain expert is an expert in their field who knows more about the problem than anybody else. And then we, so myself and the domain expert together we can accomplish what neither could alone. We can develop a win-win collaboration where we both benefit from our collaboration. And so I think attitude is universally important. It doesn't matter which culture you're from, your attitude will make a difference in the success of the collaboration. Now, which specific attitudes might be culturally dependent? Some students in one country might have a certain set of attitudes that students from a different country don't have. Or maybe experienced statisticians in one country may have different attitudes, and they may be helpful for collaboration or not helpful for collaboration. And that distinction might change by the culture. So the next aspect of the ASCCR framework is structure, the S. And so we believe that meetings with domain experts are very complex. There's a lot to think about. And by having a structure, then we're able to free up space in our own brains to think about the hard things, which is, what is this scientific question? What is this business problem really? So thinking about the domain problem, that takes a lot of our brain power. And then thinking about the right statistics or data science to address that problem. Those are the things we want to be thinking about. We don't necessarily want to be thinking about the structure of the meeting, or if, are we addressing what the domain expert wants? Am I getting out of this meeting what I want? Am I making a good use of my time? And so what we do is we have all of our students practice the power structure before they meet with real domain experts. And then as they're meeting with domain experts, everybody takes the time to reflect on how the meetings went. And that is a really good process for improving our meetings with collaborators. And so specifically the power structure, this was developed by Doug Zahn, and in our first book, we have a special chapter from Doug Zahn about the power structure. And so this power structure is that for every single meeting that we have with domain experts, and as collaborative statisticians, we're going to have lots of meetings. And so if we can get better at meetings, we can get better at collaboration. So for every meeting, we do some preparation. We then open the meeting by asking what the domain expert would like to accomplish and talking about what our goals are for the meeting and how much time we have available. And then we work to address those wants. So if I have a want of understanding the context of the research problem, I'll say that I'd like to understand your research and how the data were collected and how you might use these results later. And the domain expert might have a want of wanting to know what the right statistical analyses would be. And so when we work on that. We learn about the project and we talk about maybe the statistics and how to implement it. We work on explaining the statistics to the domain expert. We work on asking great questions to understand what the research or the business problem is all about. And then the next phase of the meeting is the end of the meeting, where we need to make sure that we have summarized all of the key points and we know what the next steps are. There's so many times where I have ended a meeting and then a week later have forgotten all about what was discussed, and there was no summary and no written set of notes. And I have had many meetings, more meetings in fact, where we do have a summary of the meeting and a list of notes and next step action items. And that has saved me so much time, where maybe I've forgotten about what I'm supposed to do, but then I reread the notes and I say, oh yes, okay, I'm to do this, this, and this. And so ending the meeting with a summary and sending a written summary of who will do what by when to the domain expert is really helpful. And finally, reflecting. Reflect is the last piece of this power. And it's through the reflection of what went well, what didn't go well, that we can continually improve how we conduct meetings. And the better we get at meetings, the better we get at our collaboration. So I think structure, even a flexible one, is important. How these meetings are structured might be culturally dependent. I'm going to move on to the next piece, and I think I'll go a little bit faster so we have some time for discussion. The content or workflow of a collaboration has 3 parts. Every project has a qualitative part at the beginning where we understand and refine the research or business or policy questions. We understand the data. Then it has a quantitative part. We call that Q2. It's where we analyze the data with statistical models. We need to make sure that our assumptions are reasonable, that the conditions of the model are satisfied, and that we have a reproducible workflow. And then once we're done with our analyses, we're not done with the project. We have to translate that back into what the answers are, what the decision is, how we could implement this, how we could actually create a plan for action. And so that's qualitative, and we call that Q3. So it starts qualitative, then goes to quantitative, and then returns to the qualitative. We say that's Q1, Q2, Q3. Yeah, and I am resubmitting a manuscript about this workflow that I will share with the network once it's published. Effective communication creates shared understanding. And so we want to have shared understanding about the goals of the project, about what the context of the problem is. We need shared understanding of the statistical methods. If the domain expert doesn't understand the statistics, they might not use it, right? If they cannot explain it to their stakeholders, then it's not useful to them. And so there's a lot of shared understanding that we need to create with the domain expert. And we can do that by asking great questions, listening, paraphrasing, and summarizing, then explaining statistics using the ADEPT method, which stands for giving an analogy, drawing a diagram, using an example, explaining the statistics in plain language, that's the P, and then T is technical definition. So I won't go into much detail on that, but that could be the focus of an entirely other webinar. So effective communication is how we make the deep contributions and how we create strong relationships. So, I have enough experience worldwide to know that communication is important in every culture. The specific details may change, depending on which country we're talking about. And so just a kind of a brief teaser of one of the things about communication is asking great questions. And our definition of asking great questions is that it provides you the information you need to make a deep contribution and also strengthen the relationship with the domain expert. So a great question does two things. And I think actually next month, we're going to get into more of the details about that. But the kind of the idea, a story that I tell that, and I'll tell it next month as well, is that every night I typically read to my children. You've seen them today, Max and Maya. I read to them from books. Why do I read to them? Well, I want to make a contribution. I want to accomplish the task of raising smart children who know how to read, who appreciate books, and who have a strong a good imagination and critical thinking because of the books that I've read to them. So that's part of it. But really, why do I read to my children? I read to them to strengthen our relationship. So having them sit on my lap, having focused attention with them, it doesn't really matter, what we're accomplishing. But just like with a great question, when I read to my children, we accomplish both of these goals of making a contribution and strengthening the relationship. And so, when we can do both at the same time, that's fantastic. So next month, we'll talk about asking great questions. And moving to the final aspect of the framework, the ASCCR framework, is relationships. So, we are still actually thinking about different models for improving relationships, what characterizes a collaborative relationship. And, I believe that creating a strong relationship should be a goal of the collaboration. Just like answering helping them with statistics is a goal, creating a strong relationship is also a goal, an end goal of the collaboration, right? Just like reading to my children, my goal is to help them learn to read and create a strong relationship. So relationships are universally important, but how to strengthen them may depend on culture. And so now that's where I'm turning back to you. So that was the ASCCR framework, these 5 components of attitude, structure, content, communication, and relationship. So I'm going to ask you again, which aspects of this framework do you think are universal across the culture of statistics and data science? And which aspects are country or context dependent? So thank you for your attention, and let's discuss.